Hey, sorry, these are my microphones over here. This is really late. I'm like 14,000 weeks overdue with this fourth part. Let's go. We're making a roof, we're making a car. Let's make some other parts of the car. Thinking about moving along these side pillar parts. I'm gonna go over some modeling tools and stuff. Let's just get started. Personally, we're going to tab into edit mode, and this is where we left off, something like along these lines. And before we even started, what I kind of want to talk about is topology or edge flow. It's just to go over it real briefly, but right now we have these quadrilaterals, as in shapes that are made up with 4 vertices, and that is clean topology or clean edge flow. It makes selecting things a lot easier, and it looks neat. It's just a good practice to, it's a good habit to develop when 3D modeling. The reason I mention that is because the section that we're going to work on now, usually I always have a difficult time with it personally, and always get some stupid looking topology or geometry that doesn't look as neat as what we have currently. But let's get started and do that anyways. So, one of the tools we went over in the last part was subdivide, or loop cut, which was Control R, and that just allows us to split up our geometry, our faces that we have already created. But another really common, I'm going to open up this toolbar to the left real fast, but another really common tool that we have to create geometry is extrude, and that's what we're going to be doing to create these side panels. I don't even know what these are called, but how do I draw this area? We're gonna make that. So let's delete that because it was bad drawing. I'm gonna select this entire edge. I'm just gonna Shift Alt right click to highlight that, and then I'm going to extrude, which is E on your keyboard, and I'm just going to extrude it along the x-axis to around that point. And remember, we have Z so that we can toggle our wireframe to see what we're doing. I'm going to go to our right side view and just bring it to somewhere right above this window where these windows start. And not all of these line up perfectly, so I'm just going to use our grab tool to navigate these into position. For our front pillar thing, I kind of want to line this edge up so that it is facing the way we want to extrude it later on. Not going to do it quite yet, but it'll just keep the edge flow and topology nice and clean. But the big problem, or what I always have a difficult time, is this back pillar over here. Since it goes that way pretty sharp. So what I mean is I'm going to take this vertice and move it to where I want it. As you can see, that kind of, it doesn't really follow the edge that we're going for here, which means we need some more geometry. I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I'm going to, I forget if we talked about this, but we have G to move things however we want, but if we click GG, we can slide, which doesn't disrupt the geometry, but it does sort of move it into a position closer to what we are going for. So I'm just going to edge slide those. I did have to look up a reference picture to see what this little area is. And this is where reference pictures start to come in handy. Let me just, I do want to look at the, no, I want to, how do I just look at the, I don't want to go to the website, I just want to look at the picture. That's good enough. So we can kind of see that it's a sharp edge along that line. That's where it starts to flatten out and turn into the rear window. Whoop. I want to keep that open on my secondary monitor. And what we kind of want to do is replicate that edge. So that's what this is going to, that's what this edge is going to serve as. And what we do kind of want is another edge to meet up around to make this. And I'm just going to slide this vertex, this edge loop, just move that a little bit closer to there, to around that point. Just make sure it lines up along our different views. These don't necessarily line up across here. Something like that. And then I'm going to select these three vertices that make up that portion of our edge, and I'm going to click E again to extrude. I'm just going to extrude it somewhere along there, and I'm just going to line these up to make that shape. Alright, I'm going to go to our top view and just line these up more better. Kind of want this one to go here, kind of want this one to go somewhere there, and perhaps something like that. Since let me figure out how I want to explain this. So since this starts to flatten out, we do kind of want these edges, this edge and this edge, to be fairly close, especially here. This is what I mean. This is always kind of a difficult area to work with, but we're going to do something like that probably. See how these are a lot closer than, say, this one and this one? That means it will be a sharper edge. It's a sharper edge. And for the top, it does, I guess it kind of smooths out a little bit. We'll keep it like that for now, and just see what kind of results we get with it later on. Actually, it wasn't too bad. I am going to add an edge loop across this area, just to add some more geometry. Maybe move it out a little bit, something like that. Just double check our views, bring it up a little bit, something like that. Looks pretty good, I think. Probably, maybe a little bit. Gonna enable smooth shading. Did we talk about that? I can't. This is the thing about taking so long. Not only is it inconsistent and annoying, but I also forget what we talked about in the last section. So I'm gonna open up our toolbar, enable smooth shading, and just see how it looks. I think it looks pretty good. I like to keep it on flat shading while doing this modeling, just so I can see the different faces and stuff within our model. If we go to our front view, you can see that this curvature for the roof line is a lot more round and curved than the one we currently have. So I'm gonna go. How do I erase this? Don't use that very often. We are going to add a loop cut across this entire thing. Just double left click to confirm, and then just sort of move the entire thing up until it's more rounded, something like that. And we probably will have to, I will edge slide these vertices. Oh yeah, so since we can edge slide entire edges, we can also just edge slide vertices, which, like as I mentioned, doesn't not allow you to move it wherever you want, but does so in a manner that doesn't disrupt the geometry. I'm just going to sort of move these into position across our different views. You know, something like that. Yeah, that looks good to me. Let me just check our rear view. Remember, that's control 1. And that looks pretty good. That was actually the hard part. I thought it would be much more difficult than that. But it looks pretty good. Now this front pillar is much more simpler in my opinion. So what we're going to do is just select this edge loop. Actually, we're going to select, let's move these into place a little bit more. Will we do 2 or 3? I think we should do 2. No, we'll do 3. We're going to select these 3 vertices and just extrude them from the top view around to where this line right here, and then line it up according to the right side view, and just sort of move them into place using our grab tool. I'm not going to use that. Alright, something like that. And obviously we need to add some more shape to that because it doesn't look too great. I'm going to go ahead and add an edge loop up here, just to sort of narrow these in a little bit. Perhaps something like that. This is why I was debating whether to do 2 or 3 vertices, because if we just did these 2, it would have been a little bit narrow. But if we do 3, we sort of have to add this crazy loop cut to narrow it down a bit. But you know, if we look at smooth shading, it looks. We might have to neaten it up later. Might have to neaten it up a little bit later when we're doing some detailing work, but I think that'll be just fine for now. I am just going to add a couple of loop cuts throughout this pillar, but first things first, I'm going to select these 3 vertices that make up the bottom of the pillar, and I'm going to straighten them out. And a quick way to do this is scaling. So if we click S on our keyboard to scale, we do this. And then if you select an axis to scale upon, it'll scale just on that axis. So if I do Y, it'll only scale on that axis. If I do X, it'll only scale on that axis. And if we click Z, it'll only scale on that axis. And while you're selecting this, you can type in a specific value amount. And if we're scaling along the Z axis and you click 0, that'll basically just center them, align them, straighten them out along that axis, or Z axis. So now that that's straight, I'm just going to add a couple of loop cuts, maybe 3. Remember, we can just scroll on our mouse wheel to increase that amount, and then just double left click to confirm that. And then I'm just going to select these edge loops and sort of move them into place from our right side view, and then just double check with our top side view. Shift Alt right click, Shift Alt right click. Maybe we could even bring these in a little bit. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good so far. I'm satisfied with the result. Basically, what I was doing, I'm being kind of picky. Just sort of. Right now, we have. Going back to what I was saying originally at the beginning about edge flow and topology, these are really neat and clean quadrilaterals, faces, squares, whatever you want to call them. They're neat and pretty evenly sized throughout. I mean, obviously this one's a little bit bigger, but they're neat and even quadrilaterals. And if we take a look at, what we have going on with this more complex geometry, we got this stretched out one, more of a trapezoid, I guess you would call it. And we kind of want to limit that as much as we can. So sometimes what we can do is, obviously we have moved these vertices and our geometry into place according to the shape that we want to get, but we also want to keep in mind not only the general shape of whatever we're modeling, but also the shape of our geometry within it. Trying our best to keep it neat and easy to work with. It'll make steps later on in the process, such as doing our high poly model and texturing as well. If your geometry is neat, it makes it a lot easier to work with. So, yeah, it was a little bit more complex than the roof, and it only gets more complicated from here. So, thanks for watching. My goal is I got to get back on track and sort of catch up since we've fallen behind. But yeah, hopefully you learned something interesting and useful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below, and I'll get back to you. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the laters.